Hello YouTube, it's been a minute. I am back on it. We haven't given up on anything. Everything that is backlogged at the moment is been discussed, and we are in the process of moving forward with things because that is the only way to go. So, now that I am at least semi back on the ball and back out here fairly regularly, I figured we can get at least a video out. I haven't done that in a while. Kind of give you guys an update on where we're at with things. The Brazilian car is still here, although we are getting really close to having it done. I have all of the stainless brake lines here, getting ready to, well, as a matter of fact, I even have the radiator where I want it since the last time we were on cam with this car. Motor mounts are officially welded in. Master cylinder is officially mounted, and I'm in the process of putting the clutch master cylinder under the dash. ECU has a home. It's going to be up underneath this part of the dashboard. There's a rubber piece that I'm going to be making out of some foam rubber for it to sit on so it doesn't vibrate against the dash, and it'll just be a simple Velcro kind of strap that'll hold it in, because there's very limited space and I don't want to drill a bunch of holes for crazy gadgetry that doesn't need to be there, and there's just enough room for the ECU to tuck in here, so it'll be right above here, above the glove box, where it could still be accessed if it has a problem, but it can be accessed easily, for one, and two, if I won't have to have it like up against the firewall or it's going to hang down here in the way of things. It's just a cleaner install to be up in that area. The rear floor has been cut out not because my kit was running into the floor in normal circumstances, but because this car is extremely low. We're trying to get it so it lays at least the front part of the rocker panel and the trailing arm mount on the ground still, which it did before. So I am enlarging the floor area right there. The tank, instead, I had made an update video here not very long ago when I put this tank in here. I'd say probably about a week ago. We were going to cut and modify that tank. I don't know that I'm going to have to. I think there's some ways I can massage the bottom of that tank with a little heat, because there's not been fuel in it for a long time and it's definitely cleared out. So I can weld on it, cut on it, beat on it if I want to. I think I'm going to heat and massage the bottom of it in just a couple little places it's going to contact, and I think that'll be fine. And then of course there's going to be a little bit of a firewall across here when I'm all done too. The front end is actually lower than it was. As you see, we have the 5 lug setup on here. I am in the process of getting ready to machine those wheel adapters that we had for this down a little bit, so we can kind of sink the wheel that matches that one in just a little bit more, so we can clear when we're low. And of course I've run into a little bit on this side as we're getting ready to put the floor in, because we're going as low as we are. The exhaust needs just a little bit more clearance through this area in a couple places. So there'll be a couple, like, I'm going to take some 4-inch pipe, exhaust pipe, or, well, yeah, 4-inch exhaust pipe would be fine. It's actually going to be thicker, a little bit thicker than the floor material I'm working with, but it'll give me that nice low profile kind of half moon area where I can tuck the pipe in real tight, and we can run the pipe up and over the axle. Believe it or not, I actually have room to get that 2.5-inch bend over that axle. I'm going to have to do a couple little cuts and weld a couple bends together to get it the right profile, but it will go over that with this fully dropped. So that's where we're at with this right now. It also looks like the gas pedal is going to stay in the stock place. The brake pedal stays in the stock place, and the clutch pedal is going to stay in the stock place. There's going to be a lot of extra bracing in the floor when I'm done too, because this one's a flexi flyer. There's not a whole lot of floor in these cars. And then, well, we've got the race car here. We didn't get a touch on that here last year when it was here. I will, here in just a little bit further in the video, before we cut off, I'm going to go over and we'll go over what we're doing with it right now. It currently has a full 1.8 turbo Sunbird ECU wiring harness and all of the workings running a 1.6 right now. So we ran into an issue with the new injectors. I have high impedance injectors on a low impedance ECU, and it does not like it. So I have to find 4 more 19-pound injectors that work with low ohms to get that one going. But it's just about to go back racing, which is good because it's a little behind. But the real purpose of this video return is head gasket repair, because I have to have the opportunity to do it. I can't keep driving the van around because it's absolutely killing us in fuel, and it's not exactly on good standings as far as running for very long. That engine's on its way out, and rear end's needing attention again. I just put a junkyard rear end in it, so it was kind of a I didn't know anything about it deal. Threw it in and it worked, but it has issues. So I do now have this one up here, getting ready to tear it down. I'm actually starting to take the radiator loose. It's all drained right now. Got all the nasty crap out of it. It's had some flush stuff in it for a while. Matter of fact, it's had multiple flushes, but it doesn't seem to get any oil contamination. It seems to get exhaust contamination, and it gets really funky. So that was the first clue that this cylinder head had more of an issue than I thought. But I'm getting everything prepped and ready here, and then we'll start a step-by-step on this. Some of you guys are not going to have air conditioning, so you'll be able to fast forward. Others are going to have a functioning air conditioning system. I will show you that this will in fact move over and out of the way without disconnecting the lines. However, later in the video you're going to see mine disconnected because it's empty. So give me just a little bit to get ready here, and we'll get. All right, so obviously here, first thing you're going to want to address is getting the coolant drained out of it. Most of you will have also a shroud to deal with. I am missing mine, which is unfortunate because it could use it. The idea here, though, is there is these feet right here. These are 13s, by the way. These feet hold the radiator in. They also hold your shroud in. So you're going to want to take these little bolts loose, and then your shroud will also have a couple bolts down here, and it should come in half. It should come apart. It should be 2 pieces. A lower half and a upper half, and the lower half can kind of stay put for the time being, although once you have the fan out you can then reach down and pull it off of its little clips down there. I still have one of my clips, I don't have the other. If you're equipped with an automatic, you're also going to have these, usually 1/2-inch tube nuts. Try to use a flare nut wrench on there if you can. If they're all rounded off and stuck, you're probably going to head and put a little heat on them, but you can probably put them with a set of vice grips. Most of the time they will come off. People just tend to use open-end wrenches on them and then round the flats, because these do round off very easily. You're going to lose a little bit of transmission fluid, which is why I have the rag down there. And then these can be pulled out of the way. Once you've got the radiator drained down here, and you've got the shroud out, and you've got the upper mounts off, you can then pull the hoses loose, and then this comes straight up out of the way. And moving your bucket from the drain side to the lower radiator hose side is absolutely needed, because regardless of how much you have drained this thing, that lower hose holds a ton of coolant. And also, if your system hasn't had the heater hose removed yet, there'll be a little vacuum in there yet, still pulling on some water. And when you release that, you're going to release enough that the vacuum will go away and it'll start draining some more of your coolant. So have your bucket ready. It'll have quite the waterfall here in just a minute when I pull that hose clamp loose and pull that hose off. As you can see, you end up making a big mess anyway when it ultimately whooshes past the bucket. Luckily this car has nothing but water and detergents in it, so I can just hose that down the driveway and be perfectly fine. You might have antifreeze in yours still, so do your due diligence. Obviously, if you have animals around, keep them away until you get the mess cleaned up. The next thing to do, obviously, if you haven't already done so, is to disconnect your battery, because you're going to be obviously disconnecting some of the electricals. And why short things out, trying to work around the battery that's plugged in? There's no memory in these cars anyway, so it's not like you're losing your precious radio stations. Disconnect the negative, put it out of the way, that way it can't make a accidental contact. Next thing we're going to contend with is the accessories. So it's always easier to pull the fan loose, or at least the 4 bolts that hold the fan to the water pump and the pulley. Loosen those up before you start taking the belts loose, because you can kind of hold the belts to help put some tension on the pulley while you break these loose. Now if you want to leave them on there until you get the belts off of the accessories, that's fine, but it will definitely help. It'll also help when you go to tighten them back up. If you run them all down as far as you can by hand and snug them up, after you put the belts on and you get the belts snug, then you can go back in and you can give them some tight, a little bit more tighten to, well, you know, anyway. So alternator first. If you have an air-conditioned car with power steering, or if you have power steering, you can leave the power steering belt alone because it only drives off the crank pulley down there. But it will be alternator first, then the air conditioner. And when you put them back on, it'll be air conditioner first, followed by the alternator. Now adjustments for the alternator are through this lower bolt and the arm. Obviously this one is not going to look like what you have on your car. This is a custom setup. This is also going away and going back to a stock setup. Don't recall why I did that. I think it was because I did not have any more alternator parts, or alternator bracket parts, and that's what I came up with out of the garage because I needed to make a road trip with this car. So that is going to go away. I've since gotten an alternator bracket over there that is not broken, and I have a adjustment arm. At any rate, some of you may have just the bolt through the front, or you may have the bolt through the back, depending on the year and depending on the accessories you have. Depends on which direction the bolt was on these alternators. And then you have the big 15mm pivot up here. So you want to take and loosen this, but not take it out, because once that's loose and then you have that bolt loose there, you then pivot the alternator towards the engine and the belt comes off. At that point, then if you need to pull the alternator off of there, you can then pull the alternator off. Disconnect your electrical. Obviously you want to make sure that you can put the ground back that you take loose. You have the charge wire, and then you have the 2-wire plug here. Once these are off, this thing doesn't have anything holding it but the bolts. Go ahead and pull the bolts out. Make sure you know where the washers are at. There's a big one on either side. That just kind of wiggles up out of there. So I'm going to go ahead and take that off right now. Keep in mind, those of you with power steering, if you were going to go ahead and change the belts as I am, this belt and this belt will not come off with the power steering hooked up, or the power steering belt hooked up, because it blocks them from coming off the crank. In order to remove that, it's just a series of 15mm jam bolts, and they're all on pivots, and there is a 1/2-inch square hole down here that you can use to put a ratchet on to put tension on it when you get the belt back on it. This one on the front, there is a pivot on the bottom, and then there is one in the back, and you'll see the one on the back is also on an oval pivot slot. And when you remove those, or not remove those, when you loosen those, the pump will probably just fall towards the engine. And then same thing, you just pull the belt off. Alright, and as you can see, my extremely oily bottom of my car here. This is the lower bolt on the power steering pump in the front. Now when you get to the back, most people think it's this one and loosen it, and then they cuss for an hour trying to figure out why that one didn't let it move. It's actually this one up here in the middle of the bracket. I can't get my phone quite up there, but if you craned your head in just the right way, you can see the oval slot that it rides in. Once those are all loose, the pump just slides over and the belt can be removed. If you've made it this far, you're about to remove the belt from the air compressor. There's a couple ways about putting this on. This is not the last pulley to put it over top of. I will tell you that for sure. And there's a reason for that. They give you just enough adjustment and just enough belt to frustrate the hell out of you. But if you put a longer belt on it to make this easier, you run out of adjustment, it squeals. Been there, done that a couple times. It's not worth the hassle, because this will eventually squeal enough to drive you nuts and you'll just cut it off. In order to remove this belt, if you're going to remove the belt completely, you have to take this bracket loose. This bracket loose, 15 millimeter here, 15 millimeter here. That bracket comes off, the belt comes out of the way. I'm not doing that. I'm just going to hang the belt there. So what you need to do in order to pull the belt loose in the first place is this bolt up here. Okay, this is the one it pivots on. It has a lower bracket that is bolted to it. Don't take those off. Take this one loose, and then these two down here, take those loose. And then this whole AC compressor, mine is I guess mine's already pretty much loose. Rotates towards the engine, just like the alternator did, and then your belt comes loose. You're going to take it off the water pump pulley. It may slip right here in between the timing cover and the water pump pulley, but that is the only way you'll have enough. Sometimes I'll even go the other way with it. But you'll have to come off with the water pump pulley. I'm going to do it this way. You mess with them enough, or you mess with it enough rather, and you'll kind of figure out the magic trick to getting enough tension loose to get it off of that compressor. The problem is, because you don't have enough belt, you'll get it to about here. And you're like, man, they sold me the wrong belt, it won't even go on. Once you put it back on, if you start down here at the crank pulley, and you get it on the crank pulley first, then come around, all your slack will be here by the water pump, and then you can get it over these smaller pulleys. Also, the water pump pulley moves, which will help facilitate rolling that belt into that groove. Trying to do this pulley last will infuriate you and the parts guy, because you're going to keep coming up with the same belt. The other thing is you're going to go nuts, because you're going to have pulled the original belt off and you're going to put it back on, like most people are probably going to, and you're going to swear it came off of there. Why won't it go back on? That's why, because you're trying to get it over top of this big fat clutch first. In order to get the AC compressor out of the way so you can get to the sorry about the beeping, my camera system alerts those in the driveway that they are on camera by that annoying ass noise. So you'll pull the adjustment nuts, or the adjustment bolts, keep calling them nuts. Oh, waiting for this wrist to pop out, please. Okay, so you'll pull these out and you'll unplug your electrical connection, get that out of the way, and then you're going to run this bolt out, and you have just enough room to run it all the way out, and then this AC compressor comes up out of here. So let me put this down, because I can't lift anything with this hand. I need the other hand to get this out of here, so give me just a second. Now we're back, and you see this bolt runs back, and it runs right into the carburetor, but it runs into the carburetor right as it comes out of the bracket. So easy enough. Now I want to show you this compressor can be left on the hoses and pulled out of there and set aside. Wiggle it up out of its bracket, and you set it over here on the core support, and you have all the room in the world to work. For the remainder of the video, however, because my system is discharged, I'm going to go ahead and pull it loose here and put that on the ground. If I've not done so already, now is the time to go ahead and start backing those bolts out on that water pump. and the fan clutch. Now, if you're just like mine, it's been replaced and there's less room to get these bolts in and out of here than there was from the factory. Don't ask me why they did that. It's such a pain. The aftermarket companies decided to just kind of use one clutch for everything. So what you have to do is you have to walk around it and walk them out their last couple threads a little bit at a time until you can walk the fan off the end of the pulley enough to be able to pull one out. See, and as you walk around and you get close to getting them out of there, yeah, there we go. We're down on the... It's even more fun when you're trying to put this back together, because you have to get one started, and then you have to get the one across from it started. That way, it doesn't wobble on you like crazy, like it's doing now. So I'm going to go back to being two-handed and get this. You with those heat-only cars are looking at that going, what is that strange fan? And what is that strange clutch? I just have 4 blades and 4 bolts through the front of my fan. Well, that is because you have a heat-only car. The radiator sits a little bit further forward in the heat-only cars, and there's a black plastic filler that allows air to direct through the core. And you will simply have 4 bolts through the front. It'll be very easy to take out once you have the shroud off. Your shroud will also be a slightly different setup too. This is removing the cylinder head. You will also have to remove this bracket, not just for changing the belt, but or not necessarily this bracket, because depending on how you go about this, I'm going to take this entire thing off as a giant unit. But you can take the intake off, and you can take the exhaust manifold off, and you can pare this all the way down, or you can leave the brackets attached to the cylinder head because it allows you something to hold on to as you pull it up out of here. Also, because I leave the intake manifold on them and separate them out of the car, that bracket doesn't have to come off. Or this bracket doesn't have to come with it, it just has to come loose. So you'll be pulling it loose here, and you'll be pulling this loose here. You don't necessarily have to take that loose, but you may find that loosening that to rotate that bar out of the way is helpful. I usually go ahead and just loosen it up, rotate it out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done. I have my bracket modified. I do not have the lower leg right here on mine. So it technically doesn't have to come loose down there at the bottom. If you have to pull this bracket out of your way, be prepared to pull the entire power steering pump bracket. It's yeah, it supports as well out of the way, because this bracket actually goes down and bolts into that area down there that holds the bracket for the power steering pump on the engine. They really cram it in here. Alright, next thing to do is obviously start paring down all of the things that are on the top of this thing. So I like to start with anything that's running over top of the valve cover, which would be wiring harnesses. The electrical, any of the electrical actually runs right over top of this. So your ignition wires, your wire harness, the charging system, the negative cable, it all runs over to here or across the top. So again, we're going to get all that out of the way. While we're at it, we're going to go ahead and disconnect the throttle cable, and if you have an automatic, the downshift cable. Leave them on the bracket and just take the 13 millimeters loose and pull them out of the way. As far as like plug wires go, if yours are still in looms, the looms pull off of their little metal tabs very easily. You can leave them in their looms and then pull them off the spark plugs and just kind of lay them over, which is what I'm going to do. And then of course you have things like any vacuum lines that are coming off of the car going to the intake, because I'm going to be pulling the intake manifold with the cylinder head. I only have to disconnect a few things, and that's just a couple of my vacuum lines that were running over here. Fuel line will be disconnected and laid over. Then you have the heater hose, obviously, that needs to come off. And while you're at it, go ahead and disconnect this one, because you're going to pull this little section of the box out. That way you're not breaking it when you're trying to get things out of here. Same thing when you go to pull an engine, pull the front of your heater box out. That way you don't break the box trying to get the engine out. So I'm going to go ahead and work my way around all this little stuff here, and we'll get down to the top of the engine. Sure, when you are removing your grounds, that if you lose any of these little star washers because they've broken or they are missing between these grounds, go ahead and replace them. The star washers are what bite into these things and give you the ground. Star washers will bite through paint if you have good ones, like the factory ones. Take note of where they are all at. That way you know they'll all go back in the same place. Before we go any further, I also need to address the fact that I do not have a timing cover on this, and this will be about the time where we're going to start getting ready to have to worry about the timing cover. What you're going to want to do is get your crank pulley and take either make sure you have a strap wrench that you can hold it with, or get into the teeth on the flywheel down there to lock the engine in place. Or if you have room to get in here with the impact, go ahead and do so now. And remove the crank bolt that's in here. Don't lose the washer that goes behind it. It's a special washer, and you'll see when you get it off of there, it has a groove to make clearance for 2 pins that locate this pulley on here. Okay, so when you pull that bolt off and that washer off, this is just going to fall off the front of the engine. That's going to gain you access to this once you get the plastic cover off. Plastic cover is retained by 10mm bolts here and here. There'll be one through the front of the cover that screws in here, and then there'll have a couple nuts down here at the bottom on the sides. You'll pull those loose, and you can walk that entire plastic cover off. It is literally going to just clear the water pump pulley. You might fight with it quite a bit, and you're going to be like, there's no way it goes over that, and then it'll just suddenly fall over top of that. Once that plastic cover is off, then you're going to have to put that back on. The reason you're going to have to put that back on is because it has the timing marks, which is why it has the pins that locate it, which is why that washer has the clearances in it it does for those pins. So you'll have to put it up there with one hand, take your other hand and run the bolt and then washer down snug. You don't have to tighten it, but give it a little with the ratchet. That is because when it's time to do so, you're going to grab a hold of this either with the ratchet on the bolt or through the teeth of the flywheel, or grabbing it with 2 hands. Either way, you're going to move this engine so that timing mark lines up with the 0, and that timing mark lines up with that hole. You should be able to put a drill bit through that, right out the back of it and through that hole, and that's all lined up. So this engine has to spin 1 full revolution before that will line up, and that's because your camshaft always spins at half the speed of your crank. So even though we're just from here to here to get us at top dead center, we have to go around 1 more full revolution back to 0 before that will line up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. You can see with the timing mark lined up with 0 down here, or relatively close, we are also relatively close to lined up here, and that's all that really matters for the time being. This will be a little bit more this needs to be a little bit more accurate than just close enough when you go to put it back together. But now that you know where these timing marks are, it's very easy to do. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove tension from the bolt on the belt tensioner, and I'll rotate it out of the way, and then I can now pull it off of the camshaft. This pretty much completes anything connecting the top half of the engine to the bottom half of the engine that is not directly related to head bolts. So what I'm going to do after that will be, we're going to remove the valve covers, and then I remove the exhaust manifold from the cylinder head, especially if I'm just trying to do a quick one in somebody's driveway, and just kind of lay it over to the side, especially since I know those manifold bolts typically won't come out down there without a lot of heat and a lot of cussing and possibly breaking. Mine will come out. I've just had this out recently, but I'm still taking it loose up here. If you have an automatic, this one back here is going to be a pain because you have the dipstick tube right in the way. Also, if you have an automatic and an air-conditioned car, that's a royal pain because the box is also in the way. And you see it just sets down there. Looks like my exhaust manifold gasket was still sealing. Oh, no. Right there. It was just starting to leak. Probably because of the thing getting hot. I'm actually curious as to what it's going to look like when I pull the cylinder head up. I already know the cam has been squeaking before. This thing was run completely out of oil and really hot a couple times. So the fact that the lobes aren't completely trashed on it is amazing. But I bet you the cam journals probably show signs. We'll see when we get it apart. I have another cam carrier and another cam if I need to. Lifters seem to have survived the overheats repeatedly. They're not making noise yet, but I also don't know if they're bleeding down yet or not. But I know the valve springs are weak. So, at any rate, back to taking this off. I gotta go find my chrome socket because you need a thin wall socket to get the head bolts loose. But that's the next job. Now, there is a tool, and I do have one, to take these rocker arms out of here before you pull the cam carrier. That's technically how you're supposed to do it. But you can, if you're careful, when you take all the head bolts out, take them out in sequence, in reverse the sequence, and when you put them back in, you run them down till the cam carrier pulls itself down in sequence, a little bit at a time, until you pull the cam carrier down evenly over its dowels, and then everything goes down and tightens up to a snug point. And then you can start torquing them down, and that'll allow you to leave the rocker arms on top of the valve springs when you put this all back together. And I'll show you how to do that. That's how I'm going to do it. You can see the timing belt just slides off, goes over to the side. We don't have to worry about that thing right now. Valve covers clearly come off past the carburetor, so there's no need to disturb your carburetor off of its base gasket. If you're careful, it will just slide right out of there. So now I'm down where I have to take the box face off, and the reason for that is you have to be able to get into this head bolt, and there really is no way to do so with the box in the way. So even if you didn't want to do this, you have to do it. It sucks, but it's necessary. Cool part is it's literally just that bolt, well, screw, that screw, that screw, that screw, and then there's one down there, and then the whole thing just comes off. Once you've run through the sequence a few times to loosen up all of the head bolts here, when you go to remove them, remember to make sure that you get a hold of the washer that comes with them. You don't want to leave them here because then they'll fall out later, you won't find them. They have to be there. I don't know how many times I've come across these where head gaskets and stuff have been done and these washers are missing. You need that washer there. That's part of the clamping process. What we're going to be doing is we're going to pull them all out. The only one that will not have a washer will be this one back here in the corner, and that is because it has the engine lift eyelet and typically will not have one underneath of it. That's the only one I've ever seen that didn't seem to consistently have a washer underneath of it, and I don't know why. This one is exactly how it's supposed to be. So if that head bolt doesn't have a washer, I usually put a head bolt washer under it anyway, because that distance is not going to make the difference on the threads. And sometimes I actually just leave the eyelet out when I'm putting them back together, because I usually take them apart before I pull them, because they almost always need to come apart before I pull them anyway. So leaving the eyelet is preference, but there are supposed to be a washer in every single one of these bolt holes, but I have seen plenty of them not right there. So as long as your cam carrier allows that lift eye to act as your washer, you're okay to put it back, as that is seemingly acceptable from the factory. But what we're also going to be doing is we're going to be inspecting all of these bolts once we've got them clean for any kind of pitting and then overall stretch. These are reusable head bolts. They don't have to go back in a certain particular order, so don't worry about putting them back in a particular order. Just know that they need a washer underneath of them, and the one in the back corner gets the lift eye. Otherwise, as long as the threads are clean, the shafts are good and clean, and there's no pitting, and they haven't stretched, then every one of these will be reusable. So I'm going to go ahead and pull those out. When I do, we'll be pulling the cam carrier up off of the engine, and you'll see that the rocker arms stay put, as do another little piece, the lash cup that keeps the rocker arm centered on there. That will also come off. These all need to go back in the same place if you're going to put all this back together. I am going to be putting them on that cylinder head, and if I don't have another camshaft, and this camshaft seems to be okay, then I'll be reusing all of these rocker arms with this camshaft. So I will be noting where they come from. But I have a brand new set sitting in a bag over here somewhere, if it comes down to it, and I need to change cams. I'll be installing another set. For the most part, you can still get these when they come up. I think Melling is actually still making them. There was a couple other engines that used them. However, they are getting a little harder to come by. The nice thing is, though, they are resurfaceable. So if you have a machine shop that can put a new surface on the top of them and then reharden them, they will be good to go. Most of them have a small bar of wear from where the lobe constantly rides on them, especially if they're high mileage engines and they haven't had a lot of oil changes. So at any rate, I'm going to finish pulling these head bolts and pull this cam carrier up off of here, and I'll show you how I'll the rest of this. Alright, here we are with the cam carrier off. And you'll see there is, right next to this bolt head, a oil passage, and that is what feeds full pressurized oil into the cam carrier and through the camshaft. And as you notice, each lobe on the camshaft, including the ones that you can't see because they're on the other side, have a full pressurized oil port on them. So the oiling system in these engines is actually really nice, especially for the valve train, considering they're basically a flat tappet style, because it's just a flat follower with a big fat lobe. There's a lot of pressure distributed across that area. Between that and the fact that you can almost open the valves with two thumbs, there's not a lot of wear that typically happens on these unless they have been neglected with oil changes or they've been very hot. I'm starting to see a little wear on that lobe there, and probably on this one too. And of course, this is the cylinder that has the hottest temperature, because it's at the back. A lot of my camshafts typically don't get this dark in the middle, especially low mileage engines that run pretty decent. This is from being extremely hot, where they have gotten dark in color. The other thing that can happen is occasionally you'll find one that has been rusted up its entire life because it's been sitting, and then somebody put it back in use. You'll have pitting stains that look similar to that, but a lot of the dark color in these lobes are in fact from this being as hot as it's been. I can only imagine that the cylinder head is cooked bacon and probably full of cracks. It's been running really good for the most part, though, so I would be surprised if I find anything else that we're about to see, because I'm about to lift this up off of here. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to find a piece of cardboard to put these on, or a little cardboard box to put these in, and I'm going to clean them off and inspect them, and I'm going to put them in the same order I take them out of the cylinder head, with the front of the engine marked on the box. The little follower cups, the lash cups here, they just pull out. These are not important as to what one they go on, so if you screw these up, not a big deal. They're mostly there just to center this. The part that matters is this surface right here, because it wears on the cam and the cam wears on it, and they are married. Just like you wouldn't take a flat tappet camshaft out of a V8 and mix up the lifters, you don't mix up the rocker arms on this engine. And you can see there's just a small line of wear beginning across the surface there. This is where they develop a trough. Mine are actually in really good shape. They've just gotten some heat to them. So, carry on my inspection process. So far, it looks like I'll reuse these with this cam. If this cam looks like it's going to be better, or looks like it's going to be okay, that one little lobe doesn't really bother me too much. It's not like this engine's going to be in here for a long time. I have other plans. It's still sitting right there. But for right now, it just has to be a reliable daily driver. So I'm going to go ahead and pull all these off, and then I think we're to that point. It appears that we are to the point where we are going to break the seal on the head gasket, if there is one. Yeah, I believe I have everything unhooked. Okay, the only thing I do not have unhooked, and this is something with you guys with automatic transmissions will have, is the vacuum line going down to the modulator. I have to pull that off of the intake manifold. What I'll do is I'll unhook it back at the transmission first, unclip it from where it's down here, hook to, well, this one doesn't even have the clip on it, so I'll just take it out of the rubber down there, and that'll let me pull it straight up and out and dangle it out of the way. To take note of, this is an often lost part. And sometimes I find it with the car, because when somebody puts it back together, they don't know where it goes. This little bugger right here clips around the top of the cylinder head, and it fills in that little area right there that isn't covered by anything to the timing belt area to keep junk out of there. This thing's lost all the time, and that is all there is to it. The front of the timing cover comes back and kind of touches it right there and holds it in there, and it can't come out once everything is together. The only time that typically comes off is when somebody has broken one of these and has to take it off. This suddenly falls out of the front of the engine, and then they put it back together and don't know where it goes. That's where it goes, right there. Alright, so I just started to crack the seal on this. I haven't taken it all the way up, and I already see rust. And I already feel like this is probably a factory head gasket, especially considering I got it with fairly low miles on it. So, let's see what kind of surprises await us under here. You know, maybe it's not rust. Maybe that's RTV. Oh my god, could you imagine? I don't think so, though. I don't think there was even any tool marks on these head bolts. I think I'm the first one in here, so. If not, that would be par for the course. Oh my god, you know how many of these things I found with RTV on the head gasket? Anyway, alright. That's rust. I know it. I'll bet money on it. At any rate, here we go. I'm going to go try and manhandle this thing up off of here. Wish me luck. Alright, well, so no RTV. It is a low mileage engine. It's wearing its factory bores, and then it's wearing a factory head gasket. Now, this particular head gasket did not suffer rust like I thought it did. It's just the pink coating that came on this particular gasket. However, as you'll notice, you never get these particular factory style gaskets off in one piece. Not like the Felpros where they'll peel up and they'll tell you where they're blown. These you have to look for the marks. This one's pretty obvious. If you look around every one of the fire rings, you see black. This thing wasn't technically inhaling coolant and blowing it out the tailpipe yet, but my mysterious coolant leak I couldn't find was definitely as a result of some coolant getting in the cylinders. And it was getting worse, so it was only a matter of time. But these, this gasket, these later gaskets were made a little bit better than the earlier gaskets. The earlier gaskets seemed to be made out of a steel that was really rust prone, and over time, of course, lack of cooling system maintenance and such would just rot them away. These ones are no exception, especially if they didn't have any cooling system maintenance. This car at least had clean green antifreeze in the radiator when I found it, so, or well, when it found me, I should say. Luckily, I have a Velcro set, and it will seal the deck of this block, because I'm sure the deck of this block is probably rather warped in the middle. But I have a known good flat cylinder head going on it, so the two will like each other just fine. These engines don't make enough horsepower or enough compression to worry about it, unless it's really, really bad, which I will check. But I think for the most part, I got my answer. The compression was just bleeding off everywhere through this head gasket. Now the cylinder head, for the first time in a long time, I have a Chevette cylinder head that doesn't appear to have any visual cracks in it. Although there is evidence of coolant having been in the cylinders. Not sure what's going on right there. But it could just be some carbon that has been knocked off at the bottom of that valve. That's what it appears to be. But I bet you, hiding underneath that crusty bit right there in the middle is a crack. Pretty sure, yep, there's a crack right there in the middle. Do you see it? Right there. And I bet you, and there's my power going out that valve right there. And I guarantee that's a crack there underneath that chip. That's wild. I haven't seen one chip out below the valve like that in a long time. That must have been happening when I got it real hot. So that's a factory intake gasket on there too. I am definitely the first one in here. Oh, cool. I'll throw this, I'll surface this real quick. This has already been on a mill, and it's already had a Velcro gasket on it, as you can see. But I have a slate table downstairs. I'm going to go set this on and run it over some valve lapping compound to get the rust off of that surface. And then I'm going to throw it on, because it's already got good valve seals and such on it. So, found the problem. I'm currently filming the YouTube video on this, but there is definitely a crack right there. Cylinder 2. This is the one that I knew about, and I figured it was going to be a crack. This is cylinder 1, and yes, that is a piece of cast missing underneath that valve. Not a piece of carbon like I initially thought. Like back here. But then again, I might investigate that a little closer with a pick, because that may be just like that one and having a piece of cast missing. At any rate, that would explain why this thing was starting to get where I couldn't drive it down the road. There was no compression left. So, and the head gasket, while it was the factory one, it didn't come off in a very good one-piece situation where I can read it real well. There's black around all of the wire rings, which tells me the compression has just been bleeding around that bad boy for a while. So, good riddance. Velcro coming. Well, as you can tell, hours have gone by and it's now very late evening, and I'm getting ready to clean up because I'm not going to be able to get this done tonight, so we'll revisit this tomorrow. And in the meantime, I'm going to do a little bit of work on this evening and get some filming done for the video coming up on this one. Something I'm going to go over real quick before we hit the break point, and I forget to mention it tomorrow. These bolt holes do not go down into the water jacket. They have a bottom. So you're going to want to, if you can, compressed air, blow down through there, get all the debris out of there you possibly can. And if you don't have a thread tap that you can chase the threads with carefully, or a chase type thread chase, You can make one out of an old head bolt by taking a cutoff wheel and running you some grooves in here. Just a couple grooves down the side of these threads, and then make sure you clean it up with a brass brush to get any of the burrs off before you run it down through there. But what that'll do is as you run the bolt down through there, the dirt and anything that's in there that's moisture or whatever will collect up through the grooves, and then when you back it out, you can simply spray that off, clean it off, brass brush it off, and then run it back down in there until it's all clean. These have been sprayed off with hot water. My pressure washer is hooked up to my hot water supply, so these have basically been steamed clean. I'm going to get them in here and oil them. Tomorrow, before we go to bolting these down, I'll go through the process of checking these and how to figure out your length. But I think I'm going to take that and set it on top of there for now, because we got some rain coming in, and I'm going to hurry up and get some of this stuff put away real quick. Back to it tomorrow. Alright, so I got the top of the block clean. Got the dowels out of the cylinder head and back in the block. That's these here. You want to make sure that they're there, because that's what keeps everything lined up. As far as the holes go, this is what I was talking about. Let's see if I can get it. There we go. I just cut grooves from the bottom to the top of the threads. And what that allows that to do is if there's any liquid in there, it'll squish up through here instead of hydraulicking down here at the bottom of the bolt and cracking the block. Now obviously you're going to put a little bit of engine oil in these threads before you stick them in there and torque them down, but for cleaning purposes, this is all that needs to be done. Just an old bolt. This has to be the right thread pitch. Just has to have the threads cut so you can get all the dirt either collected in the grooves or the liquid to come up past, and then you can kind of collect it with a rag. That takes care of it. So now I'm getting ready to throw that on. Cleaned up the intake manifold, got it bolted to the cylinder head, set it down on a new gasket. Make sure that when you set it down on a new gasket, you don't slide it all over the gasket trying to get it in position. You want to get it over the dowels, and as soon as you get it over the dowels, it'll kind of walk down and it'll sit there. We're back. It's like day 3 now. But we're back on it. We're going to get it done. So here is where we're at. I have another cam carrier and camshaft. It's a mystery camshaft. This may or may not have a little bit more lift and duration on it than a factory one. It has an offset bushing done on the cam gear in here. I don't know if as you can see, I was very busy. I had intentions of putting brand new valves in that other cylinder head, and there is a set of aftermarket valve springs in here, so I was prepared, and it may still end up with those, I don't know, but at any rate, you got an offset bushing in here. I think you can see they drill the cam gear out enough to get that bushing in there. And then I believe these are for a small block Chevy V8. At any rate, I'm going to leave it set up like that initially and see where it falls when I put it together. But that's neither here nor there. That's not what we're going to go about. That's not what the video is about anyway. I just wanted to point that out. But as of right now, we have to, before the cam and cam carrier go on, I have to transfer the brackets that are on the front of this, because if you do not have the cam gear off and you go ahead and put this on the top of the engine, you'll have to pull that off to transfer those brackets, because even though you can get the bolts out for them, the brackets will not clear the back of that cam gear to come off. So I'm going to go ahead and transfer those now and then prep this for going on the car. One thing you have to keep in mind, it doesn't matter in my particular application, but if you were ever in a situation like me where you have to replace the cam carrier, there are several cam carriers available throughout the years. There's an early one and a late one. This one's an early one because of where the carb, or this is a mid-production one rather, because of where the carb cable and transmission cable come in. The earlier ones have a slightly different pattern yet, where the bolt holes are here because the carb is centrally located. This one is a late model one, where it only has the two back here for the late model bracket. Now, if you take this and you set it down next to this one, you'll see they're not quite in a line with each other. I have this one and this one, which are close, but this one and this one are off by about that much. So I'll have to drill a hole in my bracket, but and it's okay, it's not a big deal. But something to point out in case some of you don't have the ability to knock a new hole in your bracket and change things. So I'm going to go ahead and get everything transferred over. I have the lifters in their holes, lubed up, ready to go. The lash caps just sit in there. And I have my box of rocker arms over here. I was ultimately able to reuse those. I can't seem to find my brand new ones. I may have actually sold one of these sets that I had that were new, but I'm going to go ahead and throw these on this cam. We're just going to run it. Worst case, it puts a little bit more of a wear in there, and they'll marry in. It's not ideal, but it's what I have to do because I don't have the ability to go have those remachined and hardened, and they're not bad. So I'm going to go ahead and lay them in front to back. Before I get ready to lay the cam carrier down, both this particular surface right here and the bottom of that cam carrier need to be cleaned with an alcohol pad. And the reason for that is there is no gasket that actually goes in between those surfaces on these engines. It's an anaerobic sealant, and those surfaces have to be perfectly clean because that anaerobic sealant only cures under pressure. So as soon as you get a bead of it laid down and you put the cam carrier down on it and you start running the head bolts in, it will cure. But if there's any oily spots anywhere along here, it will not cure. And as soon as you get a first heat cycle in this engine, it will leak oil in that spot. Now, if you're like myself and many others in the past, you're going to notice that your alternator is probably bouncing back and forth along with this entire bracket. And you may also notice that your bolts are in fact still tight. That's because your bracket is broken. This one is no exception. So while you're there, do a good inspection of your bracket. Sometimes these are just casting hairlines. In this particular case, it's very obvious that it is a crack all the way through. These can probably be repaired if somebody wanted to take the time to burn all the oil contaminants they could out of that, go through and take that back together. I am not that guy, although I do keep these in case somebody is that guy or gal or whoever, however. But this is a big problem with these, and I'm running out of stock of these. I probably have 12 more in storage, but as of right now, that one's going on the broke pile, and will probably be a bushing donator for now. In the meantime, I have this one here. It is obviously from an earlier car because it's got the early timing cover inspection hole thing on it, which I will just transfer over to this one so I don't lose it. And then I'm going to clean this one up and get it ready to put on the car. This one I know does not have any cracks in it. As you can see, I have my cam carrier and cam ready to go. I have my brackets on the front, and I have my anaerobic sealant down. And it is a very thin line, continuous, but very thin. And by thin, I mean thin. Thin. This is already probably a little bit too much. So what it's going to do is it's going to squish out to virtually nothing. It's going to seal that entire bridge. And it's just there to basically seal the imperfections between the cast iron and the aluminum. and it stays kind of, I guess, semi-sticky between the two surfaces, but it does cure. It's kind of like a hardened cure on the outside edges for sure, which is another reason why if you get any kind of lubricant in between this continuous line, it will just leak because it'll wash it away. So I've got both surfaces ready. As you see, I got my rocker arms here. That cam's gonna lay down kind of like on them, and the carrier's gonna kind of sit funny. You want to put all your cylinder head bolts in and put a little bit of oil, a little engine oil on the threads, and carefully run them down through the holes. And you're gonna run them down snug, but you're gonna run them down snug in a pattern until you get the whole cam carrier down, touching the cylinder head all the way around, and then and only then do you start torquing the head bolts. This is what you want when you run every one of these head bolts in. You want to be able to run them in nice and smooth. They shouldn't bind on any of the threads. You should be able to run them all the way down snug by hand, just like that. So I'm going to work my way through the pattern to get that sucked down, and then I'm going to go ahead and torque them down. I'm going to work through the pattern starting at 35 foot-pounds. Once I get it down and I get this all the way down to the top of the cylinder head, I'll work through the torque sequence, and only then do you work through the torque sequence so you don't warp or break anything. And you're going to go through the torque sequence 35 foot-pounds, then back through the torque sequence again at 55 foot-pounds, and then back through the sequence one more time at 75 foot-pounds, and then this is good. So for those that need it, there I go. And this is the same torque specs for all. 75 foot-pounds is what we're looking at. We're looking for 81. Chart 81 is this right here. So it'll be, this is the front of the head. So cylinder 1, cylinder 2, bolt 1, bolt 2, bolt 3, bolt 4, bolt 5, bolt 6, bolt 7, bolt 8, bolt 9, bolt 10. You're going to go through that sequence 3 times. 35 pounds, 55 pounds, 75 pounds. Modified a set of polyurethane sway bar bushings for this. Works out really well. Mounts right up like stock. It came off of there. Why won't it go back on? I don't understand. It even came off cold. The bolts didn't. Screw these manifolds. It's been like a week because weather kind of kept me in the garage. But that being said, I have managed to get a bunch of stuff done on the Brazilian car, and I'm cranking pretty hard on it right now. So be looking for that to come up in an upcoming video. Excuse me. Some of you have probably been following along on Facebook a little bit, but those of you that are following along on here, rest assured, there's a video coming. Also, as I've said before, the race car is here, and I still have to order a new set of injectors for it, so I have time to film another video on it before it goes home. So we'll go over that one a little more thoroughly on its own, rather than address it here in this video. This has already taken longer than I wanted to get out as it is, and then it took me 4 days longer than expected to get to here. So at any rate, I have to get back to this. I am installing the rear suspension crossbar at the moment into the floor, but you guys will see more on that soon. So in the meantime, keep that shiny side up.